In 1480, an Ottoman fleet appeared off the coast of Italy. Church bells rang across Europe in alarm. The Pope prepared to abandon Rome. The nightmare that had haunted Christendom for decades was becoming reality. Mehmed the Conqueror, the man who had shattered the walls of Constantinople, was now coming for the heart of Western Christianity itself. But this invasion had not begun in 1480. It had begun 5 years earlier, with a carefully orchestrated series of campaigns designed to eliminate every obstacle between Constantinople and Rome. This is the story of how one sultan nearly altered the destiny of Western civilization. By 1475, Mehmed II had already accomplished what many considered impossible. Constantinople, the city that had endured for over a millennium, had fallen to his armies. Yet for Mehmed, this legendary conquest was merely a foundation. His ambitions reached far beyond the Byzantine capital. He envisioned himself as the true heir to Rome, destined to reunite the fractured Roman Empire under a single ruler. And to achieve this vision, he would need to control Italy itself. But Mehmed understood that he could not simply sail westward and assault the Italian peninsula. Such a move would leave his empire vulnerable, exposed to attacks from multiple directions. Before pursuing his Italian ambitions, he would need to secure every frontier, neutralize every potential threat, and transform the strategic landscape of the entire Mediterranean world. The Sultan's first objective lay to the north. The Black Sea, that vast inland ocean connecting the steppes of Asia to the markets of Europe, remained beyond Ottoman control. Genoese merchant colonies dominated its coasts, their wealth and naval power representing both a strategic threat and an irresistible prize. In 1475, Mehmed dispatched his Grand Vizier, Gedik Ahmed Pasha, northward at the head of a formidable armada. The Ottoman fleet carried not merely soldiers, but the instruments of a transformation that would reshape the entire region. The expedition's primary targets were 3 jewels of the Genoese maritime empire: Kaffa, Kerch, and Tana. These were not simple trading outposts, but thriving commercial centers where goods from across the known world changed hands. Kaffa, in particular, stood as one of the wealthiest and most cosmopolitan cities in the entire region, a place where silk from China, furs from Russia, and grain from the Ukrainian steppes flowed through Genoese warehouses. The Genoese colonies, despite their wealth and fortifications, could not withstand the Ottoman onslaught. Cut off from reinforcement by their distant homeland and facing overwhelming force, the colonies surrendered within months. The merchant princes of Genoa, who had controlled Black Sea commerce for generations, found their northern empire swept away in a single campaign. Yet Gedik Ahmed Pasha's mission was not complete. One final prize remained: the Principality of Theodoro, a small Greek state perched atop the Crimean mountains. The rulers of Theodoro had reason for confidence. Their capital sat upon a limestone plateau, protected by sheer cliffs and formidable fortifications. Natural geography and human engineering had created what many believed to be an impregnable fortress. The siege of Theodoro would test this confidence. For 3 months, Ottoman forces surrounded the mountain stronghold. Artillery hammered the walls without respite. Engineers dug mines beneath the fortifications. Slowly, methodically, the defenses crumbled. When Ottoman soldiers finally stormed through the breaches, the last independent Greek principality on the northern coast ceased to exist. With these conquests, Mehmed had achieved something remarkable. The Black Sea, which had been a contested waterway for centuries, had become an Ottoman lake. No vessel could now traverse these waters without Ottoman permission. The entire northern approach to the empire had been secured. The campaign yielded one final strategic prize: the Crimean Khanate, ruled by descendants of the great Mongol Khans, accepted Ottoman suzerainty. Menli Jire, the Crimean Khan, became a vassal of the Sultan. With this diplomatic arrangement, Mehmed gained not merely territory, but a powerful ally whose horsemen would serve Ottoman interests for generations to come. With his northern frontier secure, Mehmed turned his attention westward toward his most formidable maritime rival, Venice. For decades, Venice had stood as the dominant naval power in the eastern Mediterranean. The Serene Republic, as the Venetians proudly called their state, controlled a maritime empire stretching from the Adriatic to Cyprus. Venetian merchant galleys dominated Mediterranean trade routes. Venetian fortresses guarded strategic islands and coastal strongholds throughout Greece and the Aegean. But Venetian power now faced its greatest test. Beginning in the mid-1470s, Ottoman raiders swept into Venetian territories with devastating effect. These were not mere border skirmishes, but deep, penetrating raids that struck at the heart of Venetian possessions. Ottoman cavalry, numbering in the thousands, pushed westward through Venetian territories, advancing far beyond what military planners in Venice had thought possible. In a campaign that shocked all of Europe, these raiders reached as far as Friuli, in northeastern Italy itself. Venetian chronicles record a chilling detail. The flames from burning villages could be seen from the campaniles of Venice. The proud maritime republic, seemingly secure behind its lagoons, watched the horizon burn. The psychological impact of these raids cannot be overstated. Venice, which had long viewed itself as invulnerable to land-based threats, suddenly confronted the reality that Ottoman forces could strike at the Italian mainland itself. Mehmed, meanwhile, focused on a target that held both strategic and symbolic importance: Albania. For decades, the Albanian highlands had resisted Ottoman conquest. Under their legendary leader, Skanderbeg, the Albanians had fought the Ottomans to a standstill, inflicting defeat after defeat on forces sent to subdue them. Even after Skanderbeg's death in 1468, Albanian resistance continued, centered on the fortress city of Kruja. Kruja had become more than a military stronghold. It had become a symbol, proof that Ottoman expansion could be resisted, that the seemingly inexorable Turkish advance could be halted. As long as Kruja stood defiant, it offered hope to every Christian kingdom that feared Ottoman conquest. In 1478, Mehmed determined that this symbol must fall. The siege that followed was brutal and overwhelming. Unlike previous Ottoman attempts to take the fortress, which had been repulsed, this assault brought massive force to bear. Ottoman artillery reduced the walls to rubble. Supply lines into the fortress were severed, isolated and pounded without mercy. Kruja could not hold. When the fortress finally surrendered, the decades-long Albanian revolt came to an end. The symbol of resistance had been extinguished. Venice watched the fall of Albania with growing desperation. The Republic had supported the Albanian resistance, viewing it as a buffer against Ottoman expansion. Now that buffer was gone, Venetian territories were being ravaged by raids, Venetian trade was disrupted, and the Venetian treasury, drained by years of warfare, approached exhaustion. In 1479, Venice sued for peace. The resulting Treaty of Constantinople stands as one of the most disastrous agreements in Venetian history. The terms were severe. Venice ceded valuable territories in Albania and Greece, lands that had been Venetian for generations. The Republic agreed to pay an immediate indemnity of 150,000 ducats, a staggering sum that represented a significant portion of the state's liquid wealth. But the most humiliating term was yet to come. Venice would pay annual tribute to the Ottoman Sultan. The proud Republic, which had negotiated as an equal with emperors and popes, would now send gold to Constantinople every year as a subordinate state. For Mehmed, the treaty represented a masterstroke of strategic thinking. Why destroy Venice entirely when the Republic could instead be transformed into a source of regular income? The annual tribute would flow into Ottoman coffers year after year, funding further conquests while Venice remained intact as a diminished but functional entity. With Venice neutralized, Mehmed moved quickly to consolidate his position in Greece. The despotate of Epirus, one of the last remnants of the Byzantine world, fell to Ottoman arms. The Ionian Islands, which had remained independent outposts of Greek culture, were absorbed into the Ottoman realm. The strategic map of the Mediterranean had been redrawn. The entire Balkan Peninsula lay under Ottoman control. The Black Sea had become an Ottoman lake. Venice, once the queen of the Adriatic, paid tribute. Every potential threat to the empire's flanks had been neutralized or destroyed. Everything was in place for Mehmed's ultimate ambition. Yet in October 1479, an unexpected setback occurred in distant Transylvania. At a place called Bredfield, Ottoman forces under Mihalolu Ali Bey encountered a Hungarian-led army under the command of Voivode Stephen Bathory. Ali Bey commanded a force estimated between 15,000 and 25,000 men. Bathory's army numbered between 25,000 and 30,000, including experienced Hungarian cavalry and infantry. The two forces met on open ground, and for 5 hours they fought a savage battle. The combat was brutal and close-quartered. Contemporary accounts describe intense fighting with heavy casualties on both sides. When the battle finally concluded, the Ottomans had been decisively defeated. Roughly half of Ali Bey's force lay dead or dying on the field. The survivors retreated in disorder. News of the Ottoman defeat spread rapidly across Europe. Church bells rang in celebration. Pope Sixtus IV called for a renewed crusade, citing the victory as proof that the Ottomans could be beaten. Christian kingdoms that had despaired of stopping Ottoman expansion suddenly found new hope. Yet this optimism, while understandable, was misplaced. The Battle of Bredfield, though a significant tactical victory for the Christians, had little strategic impact. The defeat occurred on the periphery of Ottoman power, far from Mehmed's primary objectives. It represented a temporary setback in a secondary theatre, nothing more, because Mehmed's attention remained fixed on a far greater prize. In Ottoman tradition, there existed a concept known as the Kızıl Elma, the red apple. This symbolic apple represented the ultimate goal of Ottoman expansion, the conquest that would legitimize Ottoman rule over the known world. For generations, that red apple had been Constantinople, the great city that had defied Ottoman sieges for decades. Mehmed's great-grandfather, Bayezid I, had besieged Constantinople and failed. His grandfather, Murad II, had besieged it twice without success. But Mehmed had succeeded where his ancestors had failed. He had taken Constantinople, claimed the red apple, and proclaimed himself Sultan of Rome. Yet now a new red apple beckoned, and it lay in Italy, specifically in Rome itself. Mehmed did not see himself merely as a Turkish warlord or even as an Islamic sultan. He viewed himself as the rightful heir to the Roman imperial tradition. He had conquered the Eastern Rome, Constantinople, which the Byzantines had always called the New Rome. Now he would complete his destiny by conquering the Western Rome and reuniting the Roman Empire under a single crown, his own crown. Consider what Mehmed had achieved in the space of just 5 years. The Black Sea had been transformed from a contested frontier into an Ottoman-controlled waterway. The Balkans had been completely subdued. Albania, which had resisted for decades, had been conquered. Venice, the great maritime republic, had been humiliated and reduced to tributary status. The Greek mainland had been secured. The Crimean Khanate had become an Ottoman vassal. Every potential threat to an Italian invasion had been systematically eliminated. Every strategic position had been secured. Every source of opposition had been neutralized or destroyed. the stage was set, and in 1480 Mehmed would make his move. An Ottoman fleet would cross the Adriatic and land at Otranto in the heel of Italy. For the first time since the Arab conquests of the 7th century, Islamic armies would hold territory in Western Europe. The Pope would prepare contingency plans to flee Rome. Christian Europe would confront the terrifying possibility that Rome itself might fall to the Ottomans. The methodical preparation, the systematic elimination of threats, the patient consolidation of power, all of it had been in service of this single, audacious objective. The Battle of Bredfield, celebrated throughout Europe as a great Christian victory, was revealed to be strategically meaningless. Mehmed had already won the game that mattered. The Conqueror of Constantinople was coming for Rome, and after 5 years of careful preparation, nothing stood in his way. If you want to discover what happened when the Ottoman army finally landed on Italian soil, and how Europe responded to this existential threat, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. The story of the Ottoman invasion of Italy is one of the most dramatic chapters in Mediterranean history, and you won't want to miss it.